You're ruling out a bubble bursting.
Yes.
Did you know it was going to be trillions when you first got into this space?
No, that was probably a bit of a surprise. When Sam and I have talked about the various, call it the pantheon of AI people, Mustafa is not on his list of the people who he most worries about. The thing that I think pissed off Elon with me and then started Elon's own relationship with Epstein, and the reason why he made a whole bunch of lies about me on this was...
Today's guest is Reid Hoffman, entrepreneur, investor, best-selling author, and co-founder of LinkedIn. Reid is known for shaping how the world connects and for backing some of the most transformative companies of our time. He is highly influential in political circles and most recently was named in Epstein emails.
What they should do is literally take every single piece of intel that they have about Epstein and release it.
In this episode, we're getting into all of it. This is the Newcomer Podcast. Reid Hoffman, great to have you on the Newcomer Podcast. Thanks for coming back.
Always a pleasure. I look forward to it. And, done this before, and I'm certain we're going to do it again, but it's a great time to be doing it.
Busier audience this time, though. I think it was just you and Eric last time. Now you've got a full set of inquirers in front of you.
We've got the whole crew hanging
We have the
out.
full Inquisition panel here.
Bring out the comfy chairs. I think it'd be hard through Zoom to bring out the comfy chairs, but
Yeah, not too comfy. Yeah, I mean, look, Reid, you've been early on the whole AI boom, maybe earlier than most, investors.
So early you didn't get equity, right? I mean, almost too early.
Yeah,
too early.
You're doing okay. But look, it's been an interesting, I would say, couple of weeks, at least on the public markets front. Like you saw a run up in all of these AI stocks over the course of 2025. Like we're entering the end of the year now, and all of a sudden it seems like the market is like blipping and has lost faith in at least a lot of the kind of tech fueled public stocks. I mean, if you had to just give our macro look at like why there's a little bit of cynicism or skepticism about the technology, I mean, what's your read on the space?
So I don't really, I'm much more of a private market investor, long-term, multi-year than public market investors. I tend to think public markets has a whole bunch of different randomness in it because it is anything from, the war in Ukraine is going badly, stock trades down, et cetera, all this kind of stuff. And, there's reasons for it. Now, that being said, I'd say the tech companies over the last 2 years, over the last 5 years, over the last 10 years have been, when you get down to these indexes, are part of what the, kind of massive growth overall in it. And so even if there's a modest near-term correction, if you're looking at it over a year, over 2 years, it's still pretty far up there. Now, that being said, part of what people are trying to track is when at what level do you get to the kind of different forms of business and industry and economic transformations that are anticipated by AI. People like to have a little bit of a, this is a classic. You guys are all expert in this. Week one is, oh my God, AI is going to be everything. Week two, AI is an overblown disaster and is a bubble waiting to happen. Week three, AI is going to be everything. And so you have a cycle that kind of goes through that. We may be in the, oh look, it's overblown, cycle. But Ilya
Sutskever, I think, is that how you say it? Ilya just said these companies might make a lot of revenue, but he wasn't sure that they make a lot of profit, which as an investor has got to be, sort of worrying. Or what's your I think his point was, there's a lot of opportunity, but then the model companies are, clustering around each other. Obviously, we just saw sort of great work from Gemini, it seems. Like, what's your read on, I guess, the state of the models and how much they're sort of clustering together, and if that's changing your view on how they are as
so a couple of
businesses?
things. So there's definitely, like, one of the things that was really a happy month is for kind of AI being American intelligence and having Silicon Valley leadership is we got GPT 5.1, we got Gemini 3, and we got, Opus 4.5, all of which are massively great world-leading models in this stuff. And you say, well, does that mean that, you won't be able to command margins on any of these things,
right,
because of competitive pressures? And I think there's a couple of different things. One, it may very well be that margins don't come from a uniqueness of a model, but from rather a kind of where you live within a product service, kind of ecosystem, whether it's the surfaces of how you're delivering particular applications or whether or not, you're better at some things versus others. Because, one of the things that's certainly true is actually, in fact, each of the models are better at some things than others. And it's one of the things that I kind of track, because whenever I have a serious thing that I'm doing, I tend to put it into 5+ models and then compare the answers. Right. And it kind of leads to interesting things. So like, I'm going to have to try this with Opus 4.5, but like Claude tends to be better at fiction writing than any of the other ones. And not just like the code stuff, but these kind of things. So I think that's great. Now, that being said, the margin comment, there's two things I think about margins. That even if you said, hey, look, these trained models will be run in a hyper-competitive way, so there'll be relatively little room for margin. One, obviously, if you tie that into an interesting business where you have an application, I'll give the two Microsoft cases. One is enterprise software, and you're in enterprise. That will obviously have margin, positive margin capabilities. And then the other one is for all hyperscalers. Part of the reason why the hyperscalers can invest in this is if you said, well, look, what comes out of this is the software is just running lots of cloud compute. Well, you can still sell cloud compute at your margins of your cloud compute. And so that's another place where there'll be margin. That's one of the reasons I think you have to be careful when you're a startup trying to do frontier models, is you better address this question, because you don't have the fallback of the cloud compute. So the first one had better be your answer.
Right. Yeah. If you're Microsoft or Google, you're like, well, I'm safe. I have, my cloud services to provide anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Reid, I was curious, though, to this question about margins, where are you seeing, with applications, where are you seeing applications that have maybe better margins? Because, we've talked a lot about coding assistants. Obviously, Anthropic's Claude Code is really high performing. And Cursor, obviously, is, on everyone's mind. But its margins aren't exactly the best. So, as since you play mostly in the private investing space, what are you looking for when backing a startup like in this space to make sure it's defensible?
So what you're looking for, like, collecting margins early is usually a sign of it's either a sign of a very dominant business or a sign that you're not focused on growing enough. So actually, initial margins don't tend to matter that much. What tends to matter is what your theory of the game is for margins when you're kind of in the mid-scale to scaling. Like, for example, in the very early days, led the Series A in Airbnb, some of the investors were like, well, what's the margin structure? And you're like, it's a software business.
Right.
We don't care about the margin structure right now. We care about growing this business because it's irrelevant unless it really, really grows. And then after that, we can see, what are the different things we tune to margin. So you do want margins. And the kind of things that give you margins are obviously, one of the things that I, have a multi-decade career in is things with network effects. But it can also be, enterprise integrations. It can also be scale effects. It can also be, by being, blitzscaling, the first to scale, that you then just have a kind of a general market dominance that people tend to use you and prefer you. All of these things can lead to that. And that's what I think you're playing for, but you're playing for, future margins. More than current margins. And if you sometimes current margins are the best predictor, but most often it's the theory about how you grow to the future margins.
Can you make the case to me that, especially at the foundational, like frontier lab companies, that these margins will get better, that they are going to follow the path of a traditional software company? And the reason I'm skeptical, or at least I'm presenting the devil's advocate side, is that inferencing, and specifically, these reasoning models, are highly resource intensive, and like per query are extremely expensive to run. And I mean, I guess you can hope that there'll be some breakthrough in inferencing technology, but do you foresee this going down the same exact path that every software that's existed, company has existed before this will go down, that it'll get much more, margin appreciative, or this is just always going to be a lower margin business to potentially negative margin?
So I can make both cases. I do think it'll ultimately be
like all good, smart people. It's like
yes.
I all of both universes in my head. Yeah.
Well, but I like, because you're charting now. If you actually ask me to guess, I do think it'll be margin positive. Then the real question is it lightly margin positive, all of like the fallback of kind of hyperscaler compute, selling cloud, that kind of stuff, or majorly margin competitive, kind of like classic software businesses at scale. The thesis, because you've asked me to make the software case, is to say, actually, in fact, what will matter, the reason why it's important to have a multi-gigawatt centers that are training the largest possible models is that when you train those large possible models, they will have a bunch of software derivative products. So even though running them will be expensive, you can distill much smaller models, and agents will be compositions of smaller models. Those compositions of smaller models will be a substantially better product than anything that isn't distilled from the largest possible model, that they can be trained to specific kinds of high margin businesses, which can include coding, but it can also include legal and medical and a bunch of other things. And that the fact of having to get to the really large scale allows you to create the computationally efficient but very high quality small scale in terms of how you're operating, and those can operate in software margins. That would be one of several different possible theses which give you software margins in the future.
And that's essentially the case that OpenAI Sam is making for why they need to be, raising hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars to build these multi-gigawatt data centers, is that you've got to make the investment. It's essentially an R&D expense that will eventually allow them to create these smaller topic-specific models that won't be money pits. It's essentially the case. You buy that?
Yeah, exactly. And it's also, I do.
Did you know it was going to be trillions when you first got into this space? That this was going to be the scale that you were operating at here? That this was going to have to tie up?
Was probably a bit of a surprise. But part of what I love about Sam and the OpenAI team is it's literally shoot for Mars. No, we're going for Alpha Centauri. Right? You're
yeah.
It's like we're throwing all of our chips in repetitively to a complete bet.
Yeah, not a moonshot, a galaxy shot, basically.
Yes.
That's a good line. Are you Greylock's invested in Anthropic? Are you exposed to OpenAI? What's your Are you rooting from the sidelines?
I am. Both earlier when it was the 501c3, I donated money, but when it's first commercial and when it set up its LP fund, which is converted equity, I led that round.
You did?
From my
okay,
foundation.
Sorry. Oh, yeah. Man. Okay. So, was that when Khosla invested or before?
Yeah, Khosla. Look, I love Vinod, and he's very careful. He says first venture fund because it was me from my foundation, but I actually led that round.
And did you have more equity than him?
I think I shouldn't say.
Do you feel are you happy with the for-profit conversion? That round sort of got crammed down a little. Obviously, it's a great return, but it could have been, the best venture return ever in the history of the world, right? If the cap table had played out differently.
Look, it's obviously a strange path. When I led the round, it was a 501c3, with some commercial technology to come out of it. It's literally, one of the strangest, probably the strangest investment I've ever made.
Right.
Because you're like, commercial technology coming out of a 501c3, what's that going to be worth? Sort of thing. But it was look, it's a potentially, world-changing technology, and they're playing a really smart, coherent bet. And what's more, it's both for the way it affects, societies and in industries, but also the fact that it's a hence the economic investment, but it's also a for humanity. And part of the for-profit conversion that I think was really good is, and there's a whole bunch of noise about this in press, both criticism and positive and all the rest, but it really comes down to is the organization has kept a true north of how do we create AI for the benefit of humanity, and that requires us getting partnerships, massive amounts of capital, and all the rest. And so the mechanism of doing that is a 501c3. We now have to go to a public benefit corp with governance from the 501c3, but it's still the same true north in terms of what they're trying to accomplish. And I think that I've never seen them vary from that.
And so you're happy with it? Or?
Yeah. Delighted on both as an investor and as a human.
You're happy as an investor, or how much did you try to protect that tranche, I guess?
One of the things that's very good about the Silicon Valley process of this kind of, Series A, Series B, Series C, is you understand the whole format. when you're kind of going from, well, we had this LP commercial agreement that's now converting into equity.
Right.
And by the way, it did require, this kind of billions of dollars from Microsoft in order to get there,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera. It's like, well, what's the right, fair thing in retrospect is always kind of hard, because when you're doing it from the forward back, it's like, well, you should get a really good return, but how much of a great return, becomes and I think all the parties balanced out the negotiation well.
Your relationship with OpenAI over the years has always really fascinated me, because you're obviously this early investor. You're on the board of the company. You step down from the board around the time that you make the investment in Inflection.
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 That was that was 7-8 months later, but yeah.
But you, in your statement around that, sort of said, I'm kind of increasingly conflicted because of my investments, so it wouldn't make sense for me to stay on the board. That was essentially your rationale for stepping down from OpenAI.
Yeah, it was more
right?
that I was getting this flood of startups from Greylock saying, please give me a privileged access and so forth. And I was like, being a board member of a 501c3, I can't even ask for that.
Right.
So, because it was a 501c3 that I was on the board of.
Right. But if you look at kind of like the quirk of history, that decision, some people argue, to step down ends up opening up, the vulnerability to Sam when, the other board members vote to oust him. And, my understanding, and I wrote in a couple of stories in the Journal, was that Sam, prior to even his being ousted, was pretty pissed off at you for investing in Inflection, which was, headed up by Mustafa Suleyman, who Sam doesn't really like. And then, down the road, you end up kind of leaving Sam vulnerable to this coup, this short-term coup. I guess, what's your take on that trajectory of history? And then also, what's the relationship between you and Sam these days like?
Good reporter question.
Great reporter question. Look, as far as I know,
I've
maybe
never
better.
asked you about this, so
Yes.
but I've written in so many stories.
Yeah, well, as far as I know, but Sam and I continue to have dinner together, have very productive conversations, etc. So as far as I know, my relationship with Sam is strong and good.
Was there tension though for a time?
Well, I think what I did learn was that Sam is one of those ultra competitive people. And
no shit.
A little bit of how I got, so we say, a little surprised by it is like I'm doing OpenAI at that time, which was a 501c3 on the board, and I'm then doing the separate commercial thing. And I kind of don't think commercial things and 501c3s are in conflict. It literally didn't occur to me as an issue. Because, commercial conflict is something I track a lot, but 501c3s are structurally and positionally not supposed to be competing with 501c3s. And I was like, well, but we're going to be competing for talent and competing for deals. And I was like, oh, okay, I see some of this issue, although I think there's room for multiple players here.
Okay.
So it did create some, look, I like friendship conversations that get into conflict, because in conflict, you either get further away or closer apart. I think Sam and I got better understanding of each other and, kind of, as it were, higher trust in how to collaborate. But through a little bit of a, what are you doing? Like investing in Inflection, kind of starting as a basis.
So yeah, he was angry, but you're still friendly. Sounds like
that's a good friendship. You can get over these things, but and look, this is historical stuff, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But I, just because I have the opportunity here, was it because of them as a competitor, or you think it was specific animus towards Mustafa that he was mad about your investment?
Well, as far as I know, it's competitor. When Sam and I have talked about the various, kind of call it the pantheon of AI people, Mustafa is not on his list of the people who he most worries about.
Yeah.
Careful phrasing.
And yes, the next question is who, and I was like, I don't think I could say that. that
but there is a list.
That's
that's the real reporter thing. Is like, I got to get that list now. That's interesting.
Very succinct question. I don't want to go down a whole rabbit hole. Do you have an AGI year that you think right now? Like, if you were to say my best guess for AGI, it's this year. What's your answer?
So my typical quip about AGI is it's the AI we haven't invented yet. So therefore, by definition, it'll
always be.
It'll always be in the future. If what you mean by, and obviously people mean different things by different things, where you say AI is capable of doing more than half of the tasks that human beings currently do and could do at better than, call it 50% competency or 70% competency, my guess is you're at least 10 years out.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And it might be substantially further. I think that people who do this tend to go, well, but aren't all the tasks like coding? And it's like, no, there's a lot of great
Right.
things in coding, and we're all going to have coding co-pilots and assistants in what we're doing, and that'll be a huge amplifier for all of us. But there's a huge amount of tasks. Like, for example, most people don't track the level of metacognition that we do in the current uses of our AI agents, and don't really focus on what that kind of context awareness, goal setting, pruning and editing, and a bunch of other stuff that goes into this. And when you look at it, you go, okay, and of course we're making progress, GPT-3, GPT-4, GPT-5, but there's still massive room for metacognition. Here's a simple way of doing it. Like, one of the things that Microsoft has been doing for years now is having longitudinal agents interacting with each other to kind of see what it is. And they end up in lacunas all the time. And, as a simplistic example, it's like, Eric, thank you. No, Reid, thank you. No, Eric, thank you. Eric, thank you. And it's kind of ways of doing it. And they do that in all kinds of weird work processes and so forth. You don't have to set them in a strange zone to kind of get into that area. And metacognition is kind of the awareness of. Now, here's a more kind of like, call it last year one, which is you'd ask one of these things a prime number question, and it would get it wrong. And you go, hey, you got it wrong. And say, oh, yeah, sorry, I got it wrong. And give you another answer. You go, well, you got that one wrong. And say, oh, I got it wrong. And give you another answer. It'll keep doing that for the 20th answer. If you ask a human being, the third time I got a prime number wrong in, answering you, Adeline, or you, Tom, I go, oh, sorry, I clearly don't have this problem. Like, I'm getting this wrong. I have the meta-awareness of what's going on.
Right.
These artifacts still lack that meta-awareness, that metacognition.
Right. That one of the most infuriating things about the models is their unwillingness to say, I don't know. They just always, they're programmed to like give an answer every time. And so it's like, yeah, there's so many things. You ask me a question, I'd be like, I don't know. Like, yeah.
By that philosophy, would you land more in the sort of Andre Karpathy timeline of AGI?
Yeah,
like,
probably.
We have several years to go, but that doesn't mean they're not useful now.
1,000%. Like you said, like, is it AGI that makes them useful? No, they're incredibly useful today. Like, one of the things that I tell everybody is if you're not finding uses of it, new uses every month that really help you, you're not engaging enough. Right? Full stop. And I don't mean sonnets for your kid's birthday or that kind of stuff. That's all fun. But like things that matter to you in your life or in your work, if you're not discovering that, that's because you're not actually trying hard enough.
It's an interesting topic for us. A couple of months ago, we had an episode of the show where we had a real AI skeptic on, and we've sort of been tagged as being kind of AI, optimists or shills at times for the industry. But I'm curious about like the capabilities of the models now and the valuations of these companies. Like, for OpenAI to truly be worth $500 billion or Anthropic, reportedly in like the $350 billion range, do the models need to be much better than they currently are, or are the capabilities where they're currently at enough to justify this level of, market valuation? Well,
I tend to not overly try to say like I'm an expert at it should be valuation X versus Y. It's one of the reasons why I like the long compounding of private investing, because it's kind of like, okay, whatever this is, if I'm right, it'll go into something really great, right? Even if I might have gotten lucky and underpaid by half, or been foolish and overpaid by 2x, whatever. Now, that being said, I think we are massively underusing the capabilities of these systems today. Like, one of the reasons why I push people on this is that most people, even AI, evangelists, don't actually use AI nearly as well as they could. Because
I know I have like vibe coding projects I need to spend more time on.
Yeah.
We use it a lot, like copy editing. We have a human proofreader, but we also run everything through that's and like reporting ideas. But yeah, you're making me feel guilty. I'm like, oh, I should use it.
Yeah, but let me give you an example. So you guys are running a multi-party podcast. One of the things I realized is AI gives you is the ability to translate the language. So one of the things that we did with, Ari and Finger and I do this Possible podcast, and we have this Read Riffs section of it, which is just Ari and my voice. We already had a Read AI voice. We made an Ari AI voice, and now we're releasing it in different languages. We started with French. We've already released it. That's there now with AI, right? And so it's just simple of you develop the process by which you run it through the compute, and now you have your podcast now available in other languages. And while, of course, we have a fortune of the fact that a lot of the world speaks English due to the combination of the British and the American, empires, there's a ton of the world that does not. And what's more, even the world that does, can you get the depth and sophistication of it? There's a reason why you like the translations board. And that's just the beginning of all kinds of things you can do. And that's part of wait a minute, we have the world's best translators. If you did it with humans, it'd be just a huge amount of work, but we could set it up as an industrial process with AI, and we can be in every language before too long.
Right. And this is stuff that it can already do. I mean, maybe because I know we need to transition to other stuff. So maybe this could be the last section, kind of question about AI. But if you look at the spending that's going into these things right now, and Sam Altman has sort of created this incredible kind of cycle where he will announce, and OpenAI will announce these deals with these chip manufacturers or cloud computing companies. Their stocks shoot up. There's a huge amount of debt that gets involved in, building the infrastructure needed to make this technology work. I mean, does this feel sustainable to you? Do you like this current set of AI being so intertwined into the economy that it's a huge percentage of GDP? It's, this massive economy fueling process that has so many kind of, load bearing beams built into it. What's your sense in the fact that AI has become this thing now that's so expensive and so, economically motivated? Well,
so, I'll translate this a little bit into what I think about is kind of a framing I have, which is AI bubble versus AI correction. And I'm not even sure we're going to have a correction, but I'm pretty sure we don't have an AI bubble, because the bubble thing tends to be that this investment cycle is ahead of the economy and there is no there on the other side of it. So it's kind of like the simplistic way of making this argument is NVIDIA invests in companies buy the chips to do training, and then NVIDIA invests in other companies to buy more chips to do training, and that's the cycle of this. The thing is, actually, in fact, we're going to get to where intelligence and compute has this massive scale and always on 24/7 of electricity. And that is actually, in fact, useful. This is the under capabilities things. And it may be some retooling, and it may be that we paid too much premium prices on timing and other kinds of things for this. And you get some correction on pricing, market caps, economic flows and so forth. And so some people may have said, hey, I paid $60 billion for the data center and it's really worth $30 billion. So it's a $30 billion loss. But by the way, if you started running that data center now, you can actually run it operationally privately. It's just like, for example, the use of these AI models in inference is actually already profitable. It's the training costs that cause the issues. And so that's the reason why I say, look, the bubble is a nice language, kind of semi-hysterical, but incorrect, I think. What I think you might get is corrections, because you might go, oh my God, the actual real economic flourishing is at 5 years, and that's too far from this really massive escalation, and it gets really, really, really expensive, and there's kind of bumpiness in between, right? With an overturn of capital to that, and it gets you pricing corrections, and some companies go out of business, and some things go bankrupt and get bought out of bankruptcy, or assets get bought for dimes on the dollar. But I think that doesn't create the kind of reset that bubble collapses do. I think it's just correction. And that's what I think the worst possible outcome is, and not even sure that is an outcome.
Right, just some
lumpiness. You're ruling out a bubble bursting.
Yes.
Yes,
from where we are currently.
You heard it first.
Yeah, I like to hear it. It's a relief for everybody who has their 401k tied up and everything. But obviously, there are pricing changes.
But there could be real corrections. I'm not saying it's not smooth sailing guaranteed from here November 26th on.
We got him. He said it. No, he promised. He promised. Yes. I think one of the reasons we initiated we need to have you back on the podcast was a couple weeks ago you, I think, came to the defense of Anthropic. Anthropic had sort of said they're worried about safety. They're like, oh, we're a corporation, but we like care about doing good. We want to make sure this AI thing, it doesn't get out of our control. And I feel like David Sachs, who obviously now represents the Trump administration on AI, has basically said, it's just purely cynical. He seems to see it as a totally cynical sort of government capture strategy instead of a sincerely held belief that Anthropic seems to think we should be cautious. I don't know. It's a big question. I guess that's where we were. The newest thing is, the Trump administration trying to say, no state bills. Like, I'm curious, as you're at once the AI bull and, you share this sort of, democratic sensibility that tech should still be governed some. Yeah. What do you make of an effort to stop state bills on AI?
Well, so two things. One is, I think Sachs is showing his own true colors, because it was like, if it was him in the Anthropic thing, that's why he would be doing it.
It would always be insincere. That's literally, I think, when I tweeted something. He doesn't know a sincere belief when he sees it. Yeah.
So, and I think that I think anyone who has met Dario understands he is nothing but not exactly transparent. Maybe too much so for sometimes his own good health. And these
certainly
things.
In the current administration, probably doesn't benefit him to be that transparent.
Yes. And then on the states things, I thought, Gavin Newsom did a very good job of saying, the earlier SB, it was 1047, was overly burdensome, but 53 was good. And the 53 was good because it was like, look, let's actually opt for, kind of some transparency, some measurement, some accountability. That's what allows us to learn, have society in the processes we're doing is not too burdensome, either large companies or small, doesn't prevent channels of invention and risk taking, doesn't slow things down in global competition, because I think focused on competition with China, which obviously the current administration should be more focused on. They seem to want to sell a lot of chips to China for.
They're begging China to buy soybeans. It's like for
there's a lot of flip flopping.
If you could make this stuff up, like if it was playing on a television show, you'd think, oh no, it's not believable. And
I know you want to answer everything in detail. Are you worried about water consumption?
Ultimately, no.
Okay.
Partially because, I think we may get to a point where we're, for example, doing a lot of we may have to end up using saline water and other kinds of things as ways of doing this. I do think that clean, drinkable, potable water is one of the things we should pay attention to on a global basis. Now, it's funny, I haven't really thought about the water stuff, and I need to think about how AI would help with that. Because one of the mistakes that people frequently make when it's talking about electricity is they go, oh, it's going to consume a lot of electricity. It's like, well, actually, in fact, if you're using intelligence at the scale and depth that intelligence becomes available, you can actually make consumption of electricity a lot more efficient. And I'm not talking about inventing fusion. I mean, that's the AGI,
I was going to say,
et cetera,
using the AGI to solve all electrical needs? Not that.
Yeah.
You're not saying that.
Yeah, not that. It's just grid management. It's appliance management. It's, like all of those kinds of things. Like part of what makes electric cars really work is a lot of battery management through software, right? And so it's like that kind of thing, like adding intelligence to that is a thing that now it's interesting. I haven't thought about it, and I will after this question. Good, very specific question is like, all right, how would you apply AI to be helping with the water issues, right? Because if you could, then whatever growth you have a good solution. And my instinct is there's a there, but I don't have a clean answer today.
Yeah.
One quick regulation question. You mentioned, the California bill rewritten as it is, this way of looking at it is better than the first edition that was a little bit too stringent. Should it be up to the states, state by state? Should we have some federal policy going in? Because, doing business in each different state with different AI regulations seems like it would cause some headaches.
Clearly, it's much better for technology to be more kind of call it nationally and globally so that you don't have all the nuance and, state by state. It's like, having, Rhode Island, having its own AI regulatory agency. And so I think that's clearly better. Now, the problem, of course, is the current administration, if you kind of listen to them, their biggest issue seems to be woke AI, which I don't even think is really an issue when you look at all this stuff, unless you want to look at, the Grok AI saying, Elon is Superman, more physically capable
Superman or
than
Mecha Hitler.
Yes, exactly.
It's all vulgar roast for him.
But it's like no. The kind of the issues here are, how do we make AI American intelligence? And it's both startups and scale companies. And part of the reason why, if I were administration, I'd be supporting every, kind of frontier model effort, not trying to single out Anthropic for personal political reasons. And so, because you want AI, you want America to succeed with AI in terms of how it's operating. And so, now that being said, you want it to be federal. But the thing, back to your question, Madeline, is I think that the reason I thought Gavin got to the right answer here was that I think it's fine if states started to say, here's some monitoring regimes. Because if you added up all the monitoring regimes, there might be a few of them that are like strange and weird and lightly burdensome because you're monitoring this other weird thing. But like monitoring and data and transparency is a good basis for getting a collective understanding about what's actually going on, what might happen, and what are the places that if you did need more detailed regulation, for example, the kinds of things that the Anthropic people care about is like cyber attack. They've been doing a bunch of work that's been revealed on that recently. And cybersecurity is a really important thing for, all American citizens, all American industry, all global citizens and industry as well. And, that kind of thing is important to do. And you go, which things are important here? And I think that's starting with kind of monitoring and transparency and, red team plans is a excellent way to start. And if it ends up being 15 different states with 15 overlapping things on just that, that's not a disaster.
A real quick question. A certain California governor's name has now come up a couple times. Are you supporting him in 2028? Or where are you on that?
Well, I mean, look, I think Gavin has done a very good job. I mean, the California is, if it was rated as an economy, would be the fourth largest economy in the world. I think the growth of the economy in the time he's governor is very good. I think he tries to balance kind of a pro-business and pro-technology approach with also society and workers. I mean, I've had lots of different interactions with him when he's trying to figure out things like, how does California continue to lead in AV, but we deal with, the concerns of unions and other folks in terms of doing this. So I think Gavin, if he chooses to be a candidate, would be a strong candidate. I think it's a little early to be, calling.
He has a lot of virtues.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, look, Reid, like being pro Gavin puts you, against a lot of very vocal people in the tech world these days, and sort of the rise of the MAGA right, which was this kind of phenomenon during the 2024 election. And you stuck by.
Did you try to make a Trump pilgrimage? Did you consider going to the White House?
No.
Didn't quite cross your to-do list.
Well, actually, the weirdest one. Let me tell you the weirdest one, because you guys are going to kick out of this. So, there was this meeting in Riyadh very early this year, and some folks in the Saudis sent me a note saying, "Hey, we'd like you to come, and President Trump will be coming," and da-da-da. And I was like, "Look, I would come normally, but unfortunately, I got prior commitments in London. I'm really busy, and so I won't be able to make it. But I anticipate you guys will have a great event." Then, whatever reason, that got lost. So the list that they provided to the White House was of the people who were coming, included me, and the White House published that list. And then there was a whole news cycle on how I was going to
man, there's so many scandals. We can't even keep track. You're like, if you remember, I was accused of wanting to go.
And I didn't know what to say, because I didn't want to, it was great they were having this event, didn't want to diss them. So I just took a picture with my chief of staff in London and said, hard to be in London and Riyadh at the same time.
Yeah. Well, that's the least of it. I mean, how do you feel right now about the Democrats? And specifically, you're sticking with them as so many people, friends of yours, kind of jumped to Republicans, to Trump. I mean, Mark Pincus, who I know you were close with, kind of very vocally took the red pill. I think he did it live on air with All In. Like
his Twitter was a strong signal.
Yeah.
I think I muted or blocked. I like him, but like it was too long in the I'm a Democrat, but I hate everything about the Democrats. It's like one thing to be a Republican. It's another to just like endlessly claim to be a Democrat. And anyway, sorry, Reid, I'm answering for you. But Tom, what was the question?
Well, I mean, you see what I'm getting at, Reid, here. Like, you've stuck by the party, and, you know, you didn't find reasons to kind of shift your, at least, allegiances. Trump, I mean, I'd like your take on his approval ratings, but also just the standing of, you know, tech and Democrats, and, you know, how you feel about your decision to kind of remain stalwart.
Well, so, look, I think you try to make the decisions that are best for the broad range of American people. And, you know, I don't like I find it a little uncomfortable when people say, well, it's because you're a Democrat. And it's like, well, look, I try to make the judgments that I think are best for the American people. And so, for example, let's take, you know, Trump's economy. If we didn't have this massive AI boom, I think we'd be feeling the effects of the tariffs and the stupidity of that much more intensely than we are.
I know.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you know, part of what I was kind of things I was saying, you know, to try to get people to pay attention is here is a businessman who lost money running a casino, right? Like, you know, it's kind of like, yes, we should fix the debt. Fixing the debt requires doing major expenditures, like killing USAID does not fix the debt. Right. So there's all of these things. Like, for example, yes, we should deal with immigration. A lot of that's borders, massively like increasing the spend on ICE, you know, for political purposes, or spending a whole bunch of money deploying National Guard to picking up trash in DC is not good economics. And then you get to like, okay, health and safety and health concerns, not just the cutting of kind of health, you know, kind of care for seniors and everything else, but also like, you know, RFK and being anti-vaccine.
And like science research cuts and that kind of thing.
And science research. It's just like, it's a disaster all over the place. And so that's the reason. It's not really for me, Democrat, Republican.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of people who are traditional Republicans who, you know, I'm friends with and I've had long talks with. And so when I argue with the folks who are kind of MAGA pilled, you know, usually their arguments are Democrats are as bad or worse. Like behind closed doors. They'll never say this publicly, of course, because you have to be living in a regime where it's all praise the king, which I think it's its own deep criticism.
Right.
Right. Like for example, here's one of the nutty things. To be a part of the Trump administration, you have to publicly state that that Biden stole the 2020 election. And let's just look at that at face value. So when Trump was president with a Republican Senate, in some states with Republican electorate states, sleepy Joe Biden stole the election. But when Biden was president in 2024, he didn't.
Right.
Like, what? It's like you have to state like the moon is made out of blue cheese.
Yeah, a premise of it is saying the emperor has, you know, the emperor with no clothes has clothes. It's like.
And so this is the thing, like the people say, no, but the Democrats are worse. It's like, no, we live in an environment where speaking truth and understanding like what is actually in fact best for business, what is in fact best for technology, what is in fact best for the welfare of citizens is in fact the really good thing. And you say, well, what, you know, the Democrats had woke and speech. And like, well, there's some issues there. But the same people who are saying, oh, woke and speech, like the issue of freedom of speech and freedom of assembly is speaking truth to power. Now when people are speaking truth to this power, like, no, that's bad.
Right. I mean, I think one of the hallmarks of this era is like cognitive dissonance and being able to kind of ally yourself with the side while accepting the fact that this person is widely betraying a lot of your most held beliefs. And to me, the most clear example of that has been with Epstein and the fact that, you know, Trump came into office under a lot of pressure from his base that this was going to be a huge revelation about, you know, the ties between Epstein and all elites, you know, not just Democrats, but this was a whole conspiracy. And, you know, you've talked about this, Reid, but it's one that you are wrapped up in as well. I mean, you had a relationship professional relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. You've tweeted about this. You have recently called for Trump to release the full Epstein files. I mean, it's such a complicated topic that interweaves so many aspects of how the economy and the global systems work. But I mean, explain to us here kind of your stance on Epstein and why you're asking for the full files to be released.
So, once I realized kind of what the issue was, because initially when MIT's gave approval saying it's okay to fundraise, it said, look, he served his time for his crimes, and we believe in reform and rehabilitation, and has money, and it's a good fundraising topic. I was like, great, universities understand this better than I do. And then as I started getting into a little bit, I was like, oh wait, there's a lot of issues where the victims don't feel with legitimacy that they've actually gotten kind of truth and justice in this. And that's basically when I kind of wrapped my relationship down to zero with him. Didn't meet with him again, et cetera, et cetera.
Had you been hearing rumors about him prior to that point? I mean, was this a suspicious?
No, I didn't actually. It was kind of one of those things where you Googled and it looked very salacious, and it was kind of like, wow, that sounds kind of terrible, but looks like he got prosecuted and put in jail, and the
idea is he's like a nexus. It's like, okay, you're raising money for MIT or like an MIT foundation, and the idea is like, okay, he's a nexus for a ton of money. We spend some face time with, or what is the I think part of why people are fascinated is they want to actually know how does this guy connect with so many people, and why?
He was a masterful networker. So for example, the thing that I think pissed off Elon with me, and then started Elon's own relationship with Epstein, and the reason why he made a whole bunch of lies about me on this was I was hosting a dinner in Palo Alto for a MIT Media Lab researcher, and the director of the Media Lab, Joe Ito, called me and said, do you mind if Jeffrey Epstein comes? And I said, well, it depends on what MIT thinks. He said, well, I checked with MIT, and I was like, okay, great, fine, because I was just literally not paying that much attention. Because the thing that I then later learned, that Epstein said, well, I might be able to give a lot more money if you invited me to this dinner, because he's kind of going through the network, trying to meet people and so forth. And, I was just like, hey, look, we're just trying to make, people who are doing great science research, we're trying to raise money from them. These are a bunch of people who like, scientists and technology and everything else, so we'll do that. And I think it, made Elon angry, so that later he's inventing these fictions of Reid Hoffman was a client of Jeffrey Epstein's, and it's like, which ass did you pull that out of, right? Because the only everything that I've done with Epstein has been public and apologized for. Now, but I do think it's important to say one thing here. The reason I started speaking up to Tom's original question is because, look, the thing that most matters first and foremost is some justice to the victims. It's super painful, and it's important that it's not just everything else. And so the reason why, after I made the apologies, I was just broadly pretty quiet on it, because it was that was the thing that mattered. And however that played out, it isn't a, Bob versus, Frank kind of thing, blah, 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 but it's that kind of thing. Now, obviously it got heavily politicized. You got Elon inventing lies about me. You got Pam Bondi, saying, well, because a Democratic senator, you were taking money from the close associate, of Jeffrey Epstein, Reid Hoffman. And it's like, okay, well, you've seen the files, that's lying. Look at the documents that are already out. There's almost nothing for me in those documents relative to a lot of other people. So, I don't know if that counts as lying under oath or not. I'm not a legal expert on this.
Well, just to be clear here, you're saying that your relationship with him came strictly through fundraising for the MIT Foundation. Yeah. Is it accurate to say, and I don't have the article up in front of me, that you've also, as part of that, went to the island, you were on Jeffrey's island?
Well, because this was because part of what Joey asked me to do is say, hey, Jeffrey said that he's more likely to give money if you would come and visit with me. I'm like, well, I'm coming to Boston. I'll go through wherever this place is on the way to Boston, right?
What's it like? What was the island like?
I was there for a night. It was okay, there was a courtyard, there was a set of boardrooms, there was a bunch of guest rooms, there was a pool.
you go to a lot of there are a lot of private, you're going to fancy random people's islands frequently, or how unusual?
Well, that was the first time I've gone to an island. I've gone to a couple since then. That was again part of the reason why, note to self, Google before going, right?
Well, part of the challenge with the Epstein thing is like, you just don't want your name and Epstein, right? But like now Trump and Bondi have like shouted your name and Epstein, and we're, not the largest podcast in the world. So we're not like drawing the link. So I think some of what I'm trying to get at is just like, do you think there will be like an answer to like who, we talk about Epstein files, right? And even in prepping for this interview, in some ways, like the Epstein files are just like, if your name's in the email and Epstein, there, you're like in the files. Like, do you think there will be a list of like, these are the people in power who did something like untoward with Epstein, and these are just random people who met him? Or do you think we'll never really have this sort of sorting of like where there was really problematic interaction?
So I don't know what's in the files, because I don't know what the level of, like, is it simply all the email communications and all of the plane logs? Were they running surveillance, and did they have a bunch of different information and different things? Like there's, it's unknown. I do think that given the degree to which it's created a politicization of it being used as the basis of lies, political persecution, attacks, because at the beginning of this year I said, look, I anticipate the Trump administration will make up shit and try to attack me because I've been a political opponent, and here's an example, because you go, okay, you have one person who's the president who is like known Epstein for decades, gone to parties with him, did a whole bunch of stuff with him in New York, and you got another person who did a couple fundraising events for MIT, right? And which one is the one that Trump is calling for investigation? Because you're like, well, there'd be an obvious one based on the raw amount of data, pictures, and all the rest of the stuff. Right. But so political persecution. But given that, I think that it's that what they should do, justice for the victims and truth for the American people, is literally take every single piece of intel that they have about Epstein and release it, unredacted, completely released. Right.
Yeah.
Including the DOJ files as well, like the ongoing investigation.
Yeah, because then you can tell like who's lying and who's not, right? Among other things. Do you
think he was like an intelligence asset or anything? Like,
sorry, say that again.
Do you think he was like part of some intelligence agency, or like I feel like you're a sort of master of the universe. You know how things work, and now you're being tagged with this by the president. Like, you must have like paid whoever could tell you anything, like, what do we think actually happened here? Or are you able to not get any answers? Like, do you feel like you've gotten compelling answers on what you think was going on?
I had a handful of interactions with the man, entirely within these academic circles. He was actually followed academics a lot, went to a lot of academic conferences, did a bunch of stuff, was talking about like, evolution and selection theory and free energy and all the rest of this stuff. And so, but, it's obvious that there was something going on, because he was always trying to build a network.
Obvious when? Or obvious about
well,
what?
like by conversation 3 I had with him, because he's like, you're doing this thing with Bitcoin. Will you fly over with me and meet Putin to talk about Bitcoin? And I'm like,
oh, really? Interesting.
No, like, holy shit. Right? Like, I understand that you're trying to say, hey, I could go be part of the movers and shakers. Like, like in no universe. Like, there is zero quantum universe of this.
Is that one of the emails, or that he asked you to go see Putin? Is that out there? Or
I don't know.
But that happened. He asked you to go see Putin?
He was trying to build network with me, and at that point, this was probably the first trigger. I was going, oh, okay, this is not good. Right, I should look at this a little more carefully.
Right. I think, and maybe we can close out with this section. Like, the thing that tends to kind of keep the public fascinated and kind of horrified about the situation is that not only does it not seem to go away, but the more information that comes out, the worse it looks for a lot of the people that were in his circle. Like, someone like Larry Summers was known to be kind of associated with him, but the fact that it got to a point where there were specific emails that came out that showed that he had been talking about the very thing that people thought was going on between, to some degree, between, Epstein and the wealthiest, most connected people in this country, it kind of confirmed a lot of that. And so you have these sort of waves of scandal that have happened with it. Bill Gates obviously was implicated with that. And either directly or indirectly has to step down from the board of Microsoft. Larry Summers is now basically, a persona non grata, and as a public figure. Your hope in kind of calling for the release of the files is that just everything can be out there and insinuation and innuendo can just go away. And either you have the emails in which you did things that are exactly what people thought was happening, or you didn't. And we cannot kind of move on from it. That's sort of where you're coming at it from.
Yeah, I think it then...
And you're confident there's nothing that will come out that says that you were doing any of these things that Larry Summers was, kind of allegedly
for sure.
doing.
There's unless someone invents shit, because I know I was on the other side. Part of, you guys know this. Part of when I realized this was part of the reason when I went and kind of made a, very public apology, because it was okay, I realized this, and I'd already at that point had ramped down, connection with him. Right. To no meetings and all the rest of the stuff under any context. And, I think he still would drop me an email every so often and say, hey, can we get on the phone? I'd say, oh, maybe sometime, which is, code for never. Right.
Right.
And then, as it gets politicized into an attack me or attack Democrats or anything else, it's completely invented slander and fiction.
Right.
And so, do
you feel like Elon and Peter Thiel are playing dirty, or you know them? They're allowing this and fueling it, and I don't know.
So, it's more from Elon, who, kind of every so often said, Reid's a client of Epstein's. And you say, okay, well, do you have any information? He says, yes. It's okay, well, you were in the administration for a couple of months. And
right, yeah.
Zero has come out about this.
Another failure of Doge to substantiate it.
Yeah. Doge should be E-Dog, Elon's dog. But anyway, so the simplest way to tell the world, and look, again, victims first, but to tell the world is look, all of this slander, innuendo, political persecution, attack I'm innocent of. Simplest way is let's have it all out.
Right.
All of it.
I didn't want to end on this. You bought an NFT. We noted.
Recently.
Isn't it late? We were what, is that still going on?
A reporter friend of mine sent it to me, your tweet, and they were oh, Reid's been hacked. This is a classic tweet of someone who just got their account taken over by a crypto whale that's trying to offload their NFTs. That was not the case. You truly did buy a cyberpunk.
Yes.
Tell us
what timing. What timing?
Well, my timing was good. Sometimes better be lucky than smart. Look. So part of the thing that I've been thinking about crypto somewhat this year, because it's look, there's got to be a good middle path between what the Democratic administration was doing, which is kind of this, extra legal kind of attack, unbanking, et cetera, and the kleptocracy that is kind of running the current administration with all this
Trump
stuff.
The Trump family crypto companies.
Yes.
Donate to Melania coin. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's got to be something, there is stuff in the middle. And I was okay, I think there's going to be a bunch of ways to actually show things that are positive for society, positive for the financial system, that work that way, that's what we should be steering towards. It's the general purpose with technology is to steer towards how do we shape technology to be great for humanity, great for society, great for industry. And so I started thinking about crypto again. And so I was and when I looked at it, I went, okay, I think the crypto punks, are kind of a good intersection for one part of this with kind of art and community and everything else. And so, did some research about, what are the different kinds of punks, and thought, a hoodie would be particularly valuable, for a tech guy. And so did that. And then kind of thought, it'd be fun to kind of, I did it a few months ago before I did the tweet, and it'd be fun to do a reveal and then, maybe do some crypto stuff in next year.
Are you making investments in crypto companies?
I'm willing to, but most of my time in the investment side right now is working on the companies that I'm, getting going, like Monas AI for curing cancer and all the rest. And so it isn't that I don't. Most of the stuff I've done with crypto is through Greylock and with Greylock, because of people bringing stuff to me. But it tends to be along with other people versus the direct stuff that I'm doing in AI.
What are you? You seem like a guy who could never stop doing deals, or what is your? It's only co-founding, really, or why not? Why not
I've
do
been
deals?
I've been doing investing. I just haven't been doing like the classic investor thing. Is I meet with you'd meet with dozens of entrepreneurs every week, and then you'd kind of sort that out. That's kind of a classic. One of the phrases that I use to simplify kind of the venture job is your average general partner meets with 600 to 800 companies per year and says yes to 0 to 2 of them. Right? That's the that's the classic GP. Right. And I'm probably more meet with like 150 companies a year, maybe 100, and it's mostly through kind of the people I work with, Greylock and Village Global and other places, and will sometimes lead a deal, but most often, like what I've been doing the last couple of years is because I've got these areas that I think, essentially Silicon Valley has a blind spot to, like how you would do AI and drug discovery. It isn't just create an AGI drug researcher or put everything in silico, and do something here that could make a massive difference for society. Then going and getting those companies going has been more of the recent, the days of activity versus the occasional meeting with entrepreneurs.
Right. This is Manus, MANAS, not Manus, yes. MANUS.
Which is a Singaporean Chinese company, yes.
Yeah. Does it depend on AI coming up with a novel discovery? Because obviously novelty
ultimately, yes. But the theory is, how do we get AI to generate those novel discoveries is essentially what the secret sauce and development is.
The $100 billion question.
Yes. But it's basically thinking about it's a combination of software and intelligent use of biology.
Has it seen novel ideas so far?
Well, we've actually discovered some things that we think are interesting. We've got some, even in the early days of developing the technology, there's a few drug filings that we've made because we're like, oh, this could be really good. And that's just in our prototyping work.
Okay, we're recording this on Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So I feel like I have to do it. It's the most cliche thing ever, but it's a good ending. What are you grateful for?
Well, there's many things I'm grateful for. Why don't I do 3? So one is, this is for all of the global chaos and the turmoil of times we're living in, with AI, this is a time to be alive. Like, the kind of significant moments in human history. We are building it, we are watching it, we're shaping it. 2 is friends. I think part of what makes life valuable is friends. I gave a commencement speech in Vanderbilt a few years back on that, because I think it's the kind of thing to kind of always pay attention to. And then 3rd is, I kind of tend to call Thanksgiving Friendsgiving, because what I try to do is spend time with, like, it's of all the holidays, it's the gather people at the table that matter to you and talk about life.
Great. Well, Reid, thanks for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the podcast. If you're new here, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. We're building a YouTube channel. I think you can tell we're investing a lot more in our production, and we appreciate your support. And if you want the data, insider takes, real reporting, go to newcomer.co and subscribe to the Substack as well. Thanks for following along.